Vicksburg's land defenses stretched more than 8 miles, with 9 major forts connected by rifle pits, artillery embrasures, and parapets of earthen logs. One such, Stockade Redan, guarded the Graveyard Road leading into Vicksburg. Wanting to avoid a lengthy siege, Grant attacks here on May 19th. After a 5-hour artillery barrage, Sherman goes in, but piles of brush and sharpened tree limbs unravel formations as Confederate crossfire cuts men down in scores. Pinned down, Confederates lob hand grenades into their midst. The Federals use the cover of darkness to fall back to their lines. Almost 1,000 of Grant's men are killed, wounded, or missing. Behind his stout defenses, Pemberton loses only 70. On May 22nd, Grant tries again on a much wider 3-mile front. Only McClernand's corps gains a foothold. He sends Grant a message to keep up the pressure. But they are beaten back and lose another 3,000 men. Grant realizes he has no other choice but to lay siege, ordering his commanders to dig their lines closer to the Confederate trenches. By mid-June, they began mining beneath the 3rd Louisiana Redan, and on June 25th, the Federals explode 2,200 pounds of black powder. Soldiers from both sides pour into the crater, fighting for more than 20 hours before Grant calls off the attacks. By July 6th, the Federals will be prepared to detonate 13 more mines.
Brigadier General Bushrod Johnson, commander of a Confederate division, wrote this account of the breakthrough here on September 20th. Johnson's men led the attack,
when my boys and I made it to the top of the ridge and came upon an entire line of Federals stretching out over the field. Michigan boys at that. Well, I can tell you, I about in my pants. My boys were saying, let's give them the cold steel. And I was like, that. Ain't no goddamn way I'm gonna die today. So I called out to my boys and I said, get your cornbread eating, hardback loving, mother country asses behind the fence rail. But no sooner did I say that than I was struck by a mini ball. Son of a I'm hit, I screamed at the top of my lungs. Then I must have passed out. Well, my boys took that hill, but I spent the rest of the war emptying out buckets in Richmond.
Private Frederick Wild of the Baltimore Light Artillery wrote,
Oh my God, they're shooting at me! Their guns are so loud!
Union Major Peter Vredenberg wrote a letter describing this attack.
We have a real opportunity here in the present moment to a radical idea like awakening the global heart. You know, we can only do our best, you know. If someone's hurting you, I mean, you gotta back off and, you know, but because if you take it personally, then you feel like you have to attack that person, and we can all flow in the oneness of the universe and the cosmic energy. So let's do it. It's not that hard to awaken the global heart.
On the road to Appomattox, where bullets whine like bees, cut blossoms from the trees. On the road to Appomattox, turn boys into men, men into memories.
Come from all different places. They kind of like to talk to you about your experiences here, maybe what brought you here, that kind of thing. Do you have a few minutes?
Curiosity seekers, you say. Well, they are very curious looking. And then, here, I'll take them off your hands.
Thank
Folks
you,
will
sir.
follow me. You can sit on these benches up here.
Words.
No.
How about my mother Jessie?
No.
Or, but are they rebuilding, sir?
Yeah.
They're coming along. I'm glad to hear, sir. I'm very happy to see another band from Chambersburg here. Where are you from, sir?
Louisiana.
Louisiana. More Louisianans. Where are you folks from?
Chambersburg, Pennsylvania.
More Chambersburg people. Yes. I'm very happy now. But it broke his heart to think that he lived in a country that is run by men who preached on about freedom and equality, but owned folk for no good reason with the color of their skin. And That's something that broke my grandfather's heart. That's something that my grandfather called hypocrisy.
On the road to Appomattox, turn boys into men, men into memories. There were battles won on both sides, the history books confirm, but no one ever wins at war. The last loser asks for terms. On the road to Appomattox, where bullets whine like bees, cut blossoms from the trees. On the road to Appomattox, turn boys into men, men into memories.
That's not allowed. No filming of the presentation. That's not allowed. Thank you.
I have heard of a land on the faraway strand. 'Tis a beautiful home of the soul, built by Jesus on high, where we never shall die. 'Tis a land where we'll never grow, never grow. Never grow. 'Tis a land where we'll never grow. Oh, never grow. Never grow. 'Tis a land where we'll never grow. In that beautiful home where we'll never more roam, we shall meet in the sweet by and by. Happy praise to the King, through eternity sing. 'Tis a land where we'll never grow, never grow, never grow. 'Tis a land where we'll never grow. Oh, never grow, never grow. 'Tis a land where we'll never grow.
In June of 1862, new commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, Robert E. Lee, whipped, demoralized, and pushed away from Richmond the Union host under George McClellan. After that, Lee moves northward. He wins at Cedar Mountain, wins at Second Manassas, and then decides to invade the north, pushes into Maryland, crosses the Potomac River, hoping maybe to get people to flock to his cause. His army will swell inside Maryland. While the Union host, now under George McClellan, will pursue after Robert E. Lee, the Union gets a lucky stroke. While in Frederick, Maryland, about 20 miles away from here, the Union finds an order, a lost order, Lost Order 191, which detailed that Robert E. Lee's army was split up into several pieces. So little respect did he have for the audacity of his opponent, George McClellan. Armed with information about Robert E. Lee's plan, George McClellan moves with uncharacteristic speed, pushing westward against the passes at South Mountain and Crampton's Gap, Fox's Gap, Turner's Gap will all fall to the Union late on September 14, 1862. Robert E. Lee doesn't know what's happening, but he knows he needs to concentrate his army, and he's bringing the various elements together, and eventually they're going to concentrate outside of Sharpsburg, Maryland, where we stand along the banks of Antietam Creek. In coming to the Battle of Antietam, or the Battle of Sharpsburg, depending on which side you're on, the Union Army has about 80,000 soldiers and the Confederates only have about 40,000 soldiers. Lee is at a numerical disadvantage. He's got a big swollen river to his back, the Potomac River, but yet he stands his ground. The Battle of Antietam, all fought on one calendar day, will devolve into 4 phases. They're going to fight behind me in the cornfield, in the environs around there. Later in the morning, they're going to fight around the West Woods off to my right. Later that morning and into the early afternoon, they're going to fight for a sunken road, now known as the Bloody Lane, and overlapping with that and into the afternoon, they're going to fight at and around the Burnside Bridge. Let me go into each of those phases. The fighting starts early in the morning where the Union men, Hooker's men, the 1st Corps, followed by the Union 12th Corps, 20,000 soldiers are going to push through and around the cornfield while Stonewall Jackson's men are going to push back with artillery, with infantry, and Jackson is taxed to every last bit of strength he has. They are pulling Confederates from the right over to the left to bolster Jackson. Ultimately, Jackson's line will hold, just barely hold, right as the next phase starts, where the Union 2nd Corps arrives, and that Union 2nd Corps will split so that some of the men fight in the West Woods, some of the men fight over toward the Bloody Lane. The Unionists that went to the West Woods met disaster behind the Dunker Church at the hands of a powerful Confederate counterattack. The Unionists who attacked the Bloody Lane found that the Confederates were not particularly strong there in that otherwise strong position. Ultimately, the Union was able to flank the Bloody Lane, get around it, and the Confederates fell back from there. And in bloody fighting, the Union captured that position. In the meantime, the Union is struggling, the 9th Corps under Ambrose Burnside, struggling to capture or get around Burnside Bridge, which ultimately they do after several unsuccessful attempts at 10 in the morning, at noon, and finally at 1 in the afternoon, the Union crosses Burnside Bridge, pushes the Confederates away, and disaster is imminent for the South. After capturing the Burnside Bridge, the Union pushed on. They are about to cut off the only route of retreat for Robert E. Lee's army. It is all but certain disaster for the Confederates. They're starting to fall back en masse. Just as the Union began to advance, however, with raw recruits on their far left flank, on that flank arrives A.P. Hill's Light Division, just arriving from Harper's Ferry, just when and just where they were needed. They hit the Union flank with a fury. The Union flank will crumble. That will force the rest of the 9th Corps back, and ultimately the Union movement just stalls. The Battle of Antietam ends there. It is the bloodiest single day in all of American history. 23,000 soldiers killed, wounded, captured, or missing. The next day, both sides were so worn out that there was no fighting on the 18th. But the Union does pursue. They pursue the Confederates as they're trying to get back into Virginia. Now West Virginia, there's a fight at the Battle of Shepherdstown, but the Southern invasion is done. They have been repelled, and this is enough for Abraham Lincoln to take the bold stroke of issuing his preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, which will suddenly change the war. Starting on January 1st, 1863, the war will no longer be just about saving and preserving the Union, but rather about freeing the slaves. The Battle of Antietam also, with that move, kept European powers out. It is therefore one of the most important days in American history.
couldn't defend them all. The far right flank and the ford that's over here behind us on the Potomac. And the ground is incredible. 400 guys, Georgia.
You want me to drive around it?
No, I gotta get.
You get a good one?
Yeah, I gotta get a video of it.
We're in Jefferson County, West Virginia, and we're hunting the grass man. And this time, it's personal. We're in West Virginia, Jefferson County, and we're hunting the snallygaster. And this time, it's personal. What's that? He's over there.
Oh, Buck's down! Buck's down! Oh, you okay?
Cold is the water. It freezes your already cold mind. Already cold, cold mind. And death is at your doorstep, and it will steal your innocence, but it will not steal your substance. But you are not alone in this, and you are not alone in this. As brothers we will stand and we'll hold your hand, hold your hand.
And that was Hayden just joking around on a road that saw this.
Does it go on your blog?
No, I don't have a blog. Look at all those dead people.
And you are the mother of your baby child, the one to whom you gave life. And you have your choices, and these are what make man great, his ladder to the stars. But you are not alone in this.
So out of 15,000, only 4,000 were killed on the Union side?
Just in the cornfield.
That's pretty good. Oh wait, this is like out of everybody? No, this is out of...
Come on, boys, butt 'em. Let's go. Get over that fence.
And you are not alone in this. As brothers we will stand and we'll hold your hand. Hold your hand.
In June of 1863, Confederate General Robert E. Lee took his Army of Northern Virginia into the North for the second time. The Union commander, George Gordon Meade, was in pursuit. They would ultimately bump into each other here at Gettysburg. Behind me is the town of Gettysburg, around which the Battle of Gettysburg will be fought. The Battle of Gettysburg started by accident. Literally, troops bumped into each other. General Lee heard that Meade was pursuing him, and Lee concentrated his army. The Union vanguard is already here as well, and they're going to bang into each other north and west of town on McPherson's Ridge. It's an intense fight. Ultimately, the fight will grow until north of town. You're going to have the Union 11th Corps fighting against a corps under a guy named Richard Ewell. In the end, you're going to have 30,000 Confederates outflank and whip 18,000 Union troops who retreat back through town to Cemetery Hill and to Culp's Hill, where we stand now. And for the next 24 hours, all that happens is that both sides bring the remainder of their troops here until the Yankees have maybe 90,000 troops and the Southerners have maybe 70,000 troops. And the Yankees form in the shape of a fishhook. And we are right here on this fishhook at the end of Culp's Hill here. The Union line will continue along Cemetery Hill behind me, Cemetery Ridge, and eventually end over on Little Round Top. The Southerners line up around that line, basically formed on the most distant tree line you can see way off in the distance, okay? If General Lee needs to go from one side of his army to the other, it's 6 miles. Meade only has to go 2.5. Meade is also on the defensive. Meade has more men on a more compact line, and Lee is more strung out, and Meade finally has the home field advantage. On the second day of the battle, Robert E. Lee decided to take 20,000 troops under James Longstreet and attack the Union left, and take maybe 5,000 to 10,000 and attack Culp's Hill. But the attack on the Union left flank took place first. The Southerners are going to have to get over there without being seen opposite the Union lines. Ultimately, the Southern line will attack what's called an echelon, where a couple of brigades moved in, and then a couple more, and a couple more. And ultimately, Longstreet's men will make fierce attacks. First they'll fight at Devil's Den and Little Round Top, and then onto the wheat field. And then they actually have found a gap in the middle of the Union line, troops that had gone to reinforce some of the fighting in other areas. But the Confederates can't quite push through it, because wherever they show up, Union reinforcements from inside Meade's strong fishhook position arrive and push the Southerners back. Ultimately, the bloodiest fighting at Gettysburg, the second day on the south end, will come to a close without a decisive result. And while Longstreet is attacking the Union left flank, the Confederates are beginning a huge artillery bombardment on the Union right flank, here on Culp's Hill. That bombardment wouldn't do anything. The Confederate attack doesn't come for long, until long after, actually, the fighting on the Union left flank is mostly over. Ultimately, the Southerners will try to attack East Cemetery Hill. They capture part of East Cemetery Hill. They capture 9 cannons. This is the key Union position at East Cemetery Hill, and it's about to fall to the Confederates. But again, Union reinforcements push the Confederates back. The Confederates have a little bit more success here on Culp's Hill. Culp's Hill consists of 2 hills, an upper hill and a lower hill. This is night fighting, very odd in the Civil War. The Confederates easily capture the lower hill, but they're unable to capture the pinnacle of Culp's Hill. The next day, the fighting resumes, where the Confederates try to capture Upper Culp's Hill. The Yankees return with even more reinforcements, not only recapturing their old trenches in Lower Culp's Hill that they had lost, but maintaining their possession of Upper Culp's Hill. On the third day, having already tested the Union left flank and the Union right flank, the Confederates opted to attack the Union center. And this is what we now know as Pickett's Charge. Pickett's Charge is going to take place in the fields behind me, and on the afternoon of July 3rd, you're eventually going to have a great moan go up from the Union line. This is after a huge artillery bombardment, but the moan comes not from that, but rather from the beauty and pageantry of a great Confederate assault. 12,000 troops advancing across that field, you can see over my shoulder. The Yankees decimated with long-range artillery, and as they reached the road, Union reinforcements poured to the area. The Union flank bulged out, so the Confederates are going to get flanked, but nonetheless, they push on impetuously, gain some of the key stone wall in the area. The Yankees are able to, however, push them back. 6,000 of the 12,000 soldiers who made the attack were killed, wounded, or captured. Lee lost 23 battle flags in that attack, more than he'd lost up to that point in the war combined. Robert E. Lee horribly failed in Pickett's Charge, but the next day he still stayed here and through the rain across the fields faced George Gordon Meade, said, "Come on, Meade, attack me." Meade did not take the bait. That night, Robert E. Lee pulled back through the mountains. 9 days later, escaped back into Virginia, and the Civil War goes on for almost 2 more years.
President of the United States at the time to dedicate the monument. In 1913, there had been over 50,000 old veterans here, but by 1938, not a lot of veterans left. Less than 2,000 here, average age 94. Going up toward Harrisburg, 35 miles north that way. And those guys probably could have taken Harrisburg if Lee would have given them more time. But Lee needs to get them back down here. Messenger sent up there, turns those men around, they're coming back. Have a round base like this at the bottom. Union ones have a square base at the bottom. When we see some, you'll notice that when we see some of the other ones. Okay, but this is a Confederate one, and it says CSA on there, and there's the chain of command on the top, and this is Hayes's brigade, which is where your relative is going to be. Okay, these were the regiments that were in it. These 5 regiments from Louisiana. They were mostly from the New Orleans area. Okay, they were called the Louisiana Tigers. They wore some kind of a Zouave type of uniform that was a little bit different from what the other ones were wearing. You can see some of these Zouave uniforms in the visitor center. I don't think they have any Confederate ones. It's at 3 p.m. to Hope's Brigade, the 11th Corps, aided in taking the guns, pursued retreating Union troops into the town, capturing many. Late in the evening, halted on East High Street. That's just above us back there. Okay, now on the second day, this is going to tell us they're going to attack Cemetery Hill. They're waiting down here all day long on the 2nd for Longstreet to get ready down there on the other side of the field. We'll talk about that in a minute here. Okay, in any event, they have to wait. They're out here in the sun waiting all day long. Okay, I believe the 9th was pretty much down there near the other end of the line there. We're on the very left side. The Hayes's brigade runs all the way to the right over here, and there was another brigade involved in the attack, Avery's brigade, North Carolina, I mentioned that before. They're going to be to our left over here. Okay, they're going to be down here, and Hayes's brigade further down that way. And they're going to swing around like this, to attack Cemetery Hill, which is right over there. Okay, and when we get up to the top of the slope here in a second, I'll show you where that is.
Out on the corner with cast iron blood, 10,000 or more with hearts on the run. They say I might die and I may be cold. I may have no Jesus, I may have no soul. In prison I hear there's time to be good, but the first thing you see is the last thing you should. Well, I've seen the battle and I've seen the war.
Okay. Like a horseshoe. Okay? And we got Pennsylvania 83rd to their right. Over there. Okay. So
no, you're fine.
This is the end of the
I've seen the battle and I've seen the war, and the life out here is the life I've been sold.
In this area in front of us here, okay, is the Philadelphia Brigade. Okay, these are monuments of the Philadelphia Brigade here. Okay, many of these men from Philadelphia have gone out into the field out there. They've picked up extra rifles from the second day's battle. Many of them have 5, 6, 7 rifles loaded and ready to use against Pickett's men as they cross this field. So as Pickett's men move forward, the Union cannon will start shooting at them right away. Very effective were the cannon from the sides of the lines.
They say there's a passing where all stand to judge, but the devil's awaiting with Christ like a son. When the look comes your way, best say it was I. For the reasons you hold, give reasons to die. The calling's impatient when cause never won, but the last one to say it may last through the flood. Well, I've seen the battle and I've seen the war, and the life in here is the life I've been sold. Yeah, I've seen the battle and I've seen the war, and the life out here is the life I've been told. I'm born in and weary, but life's just begun. And I've run from the reasons and run to the gun. They say I'm the killer and thy will be done. And the doors won't be open when I finally become. And I've seen the battle and I've seen the war. And the life out here is the life I've been sold. Yeah, I've seen the battle and I've seen the war. And the life in here is the life I've been told. life's just begun, and I've run from the reasons and run to the gun. They say I'm the killer and thy will be done, and the doors won't be open when I finally become. And I've seen the battle and I've seen the war, and the life out here is the life I've been sold. Yeah, I've seen the battle and I've seen the war, and the life in here is the life I've been told. Meet us
the spring, and the winter won't mean anything, and the summer is a lonesome dale. I am lost without you, Annabelle. I have lost my faith in everything. Annabelle, Annabelle, are you free? Will you wrap me in your legacy, in a blanket with your sweet perfume? I am always thinking thoughts of you. Annabelle, Annabelle, where did you go? I've looked high and I've looked low. Oh, I've looked low and I've looked high. Tell me, where does the spirit go when you die? Oh, where does the spirit go when you die?
Today, all these plants and cattails are soaking up most of the water, and we didn't have these concrete retaining walls. Gallantly riding into battle, slaying the enemy, and coming home a hero. War was about honor and glory and victory, and they thought the war would only last a few weeks. Well, in July in 1863, when the war really came to their doorstep, they learned a very different side of war. They learned the reality of war. This little town only had 2,400 people in it at the time of the Gettysburg Battle, and it was invaded by 94,000 Union troops and 72,000 Confederate troops. So when the Confederates came into town, they found his empty building and they just ransacked it. They would have taken all the food, all the cloth to make bandages, anything they could use for medicine, if they found any money or silver, any weapons, any liquor, any animals like chickens, a hog, a cow. They would just take whatever they could use. But because this was the tallest building on the block at the time of the battle, they also took position in this building. There's a little window on the south side of the building. They would have called it the garret window. We'd call it the attic window. And there were Confederate sharpshooters in that little garret window shooting south at the Union Army. The Union Army was about 2 blocks down, shooting up at them, trying to get them in that little window. And all the holes and damage on this building is battle damage caused by musket fire. This is the most heavily battle damaged building still standing in Gettysburg.
ICECREAM. Ice cream. Ice cream. Ice cream. Ice cream. Ice cream. Ice cream.
Johnny has gone for a soldier. Shula, 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 grow. Me, oh my, I love him so. And only time will heal my woe. Johnny has gone for a soldier. I'll sell my clock, I'll sell my reel to buy my love a sword of steel, so it in battle he may wield. Johnny has gone for a soldier. Shula, 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 grow. Me, oh my, I love him so. And only time will heal my woe. Johnny has gone for a soldier. I'll dye my petticoats crimson red, and through the streets I'll beg my bread till he comes back and we are wed. Johnny has gone for a soldier.
Johnny don't wanna go to school no more, no more. Johnny said books ain't cool no more. Johnny wanna be a rapper like his big cousin. Johnny caught a body yesterday out hustling. God bless America, you know we all love him.
First of all, does anybody know the two sides of the American Civil War? All right, we got one, the North and the South. Does anybody know another name for them? Holding secessionist Confederate state of Virginia. And then we have the Union, the United States, in Maryland. So if you look behind you, you can see a mountain rising in the distance underneath the
we are not, we're also not inclined to listen to disloyal sentiment. As you can see on the board, that's an actual case. That's someone saying something against the United States government.
Step out this door and into history. Let's go.
Left my home and left my love
Caught on a rusty nail.
Devil rose up heavy with gold.
My soul's not for sale.
Then a holy man in a house of God,
He offered me a book of prayer.
but when I left my home and left my love, I left my faith back there. Smoke don't rise, fuel don't burn, sun don't shine no more. Late one night, sorrow come round, scratching at my door. But I cut my hands and break my back, dragging this bag of stones till they bury me down beneath the ground with the dust and rattle and bones. Shut my eyes and hang my head,
Darkness makes no sound.
climbing up a bottleneck.
Hurts on the way back down.
When a sadness falls on the morning bird,
Wonder what the day will bring.
but I shut my eyes and hang my head. At least that bird can sing. Smoke don't rise, fuel don't burn, sun don't shine no more. Late one night, sorrow come round, scratching at my door. But I cut my hands and break my back, dragging this bag of stones till they bury me down beneath the ground with the dust and rattle and bone. Till they bury me down beneath the ground with the dust and rattle and bone.
his arms I'll be. The wounds this world left on my soul will all be healed and I'll be whole. Sun and moon will be replaced with the light of Jesus' face. And I will not be ashamed, for my Savior knows my name. It don't matter where you bury me, I'll be home and I'll be free. It don't matter anywhere I lay. All my tears be washed away. Gold and silver blind the eye, temporary riches lie. Come and eat from heaven's store, come and drink and thirst no more. So weep not for me, my friend, when my time below does end. For my life belongs to Him who will raise the dead again. It don't matter where you bury me, I'll be home and I'll be free. It don't matter anywhere I lay. All my tears be washed away. All my tears be washed away.
Just about 6 feet long.
Could do it, and certainly the military men did little to help. They sent neither tools nor timber, and delivered substandard fuses and 4,000 pounds less powder than Colonel Pleasants had requested. Still, the coal miners of the 48th Pennsylvania toiled round the clock. Using only cracker boxes, they hauled 18,000 cubic feet of dirt out of the mine and carefully spread it out of sight in the ravine behind you. After a month of dangerous, exacting work, the mine was finished. 4 tons of gunpowder were planted directly under a Confederate battery. At 3:15 on the morning of July 30th, Colonel Pleasants and 2 other men disappeared into the mine entrance to light the fuse. Moments later, they reappeared and waited for 10, 20, 30 minutes. Nothing happened. The fuse had failed. At 4:30 a.m., 2 of Pleasant's soldiers re-entered the mine. They respliced the fuse, lit it, and dashed out. When they emerged, they told Pleasants, "It's all right, Colonel. She's burning." Thousands waited. Then, 10 minutes later, they felt the ground shake and heard a dull roar. "There she goes!" someone yelled. The Pennsylvanians' mine worked exactly as designed. For the Federals, it would be one of the few aspects of their plan to work that day.
The 9th Corps is actually underneath the command of General Burnside. Now, General Burnside does have a lot of successes earlier in the war, especially with his coastal landings in the Carolinas. Problem is, military tries to put him in command of the army, gets a lot of good people killed in Fredericksburg, so they put him back in charge of the 9th Corps itself. Well, when Grant actually gets put into command and he launches his overland campaign, his philosophy is, I can always get more men, Lee cannot. So because of that, he is throwing his men forward continually. So of course, at this point, they know this is going to work. Now, the only reason this is actually going to work is actually because of the brilliance of Colonel Pleasants. Because the big thing that the Army says is, you can't have a mine more than 100 feet and can never be more than 10 foot deep, is actually because at 100 feet underneath ground, carbon dioxide will build up in a mine and you will suffocate. Well, the only way the Army knows how to get around this, the hole is full of them, this is going to become a non-stop killing field for 45 straight minutes. Our Confederates will fire their muskets until they run out of ammo. They're going to fix their bayonets and they're going to throw them like javelins into this hole. They're going to light mortars with their hand, roll them into the hole. So many men will die so fast in this hole, blood will pull up more than 5 foot deep. This goes on for 45 straight minutes. And it was at this point that a Confederate officer finally yells into the hole, "Why don't you boys just give up already?" Union officer's gonna yell back out, "For God's sake, give us the chance." A few more shots will be exchanged and it will all be over. More than 700 Union troops will be taken prisoner here. But in that 45 minutes, 3,800 men die in this hole. 4,600 men will die during the entire attack, but 3,800 of them die in this hole. Now, of course, when we look at the hole today, it doesn't look that impressive. That's because you have to remember, that afternoon, the Confederates still hold this ground. And what do you do with a hole in your line and 3,800 rotting bodies? You fill it in with dirt. And they will hold this ground all the way to the end of the war. Now, what we see today of the crater is actually the result of 2 excavations. The Army will come back here in 1866 in an attempt to reinter some of the bodies, but being Reconstruction, they don't reinter that many, they walk away. The Army will be back out here in 1928. They're digging, find 21 bodies, reinter them, and walk away. There are still thousands of men buried in this hole today. And we will let them lie because they have truly paid for this ground with their blood. Grant, who sat there and said the only thing in the war he ever regretted was his last charge at Cold Harbor, will say that this is the worst thing he had ever seen in the entire war. And that is because a drunk sent men forward to die.
On arriving there, an enormous hole in the ground filled with dust, great blocks of clay, guns, broken carriages, projecting timbers, and men buried in various ways. Some with their necks, others in their face, some with only their legs. Federals jumped into the crater to help trap victims or to escape the intensifying Confederate fire. The attack stalled. For hours, the Federals huddled here and in the nearby works. The crater was full to suffocation. Every organization melted away into a mass of human beings clinging by toes and heels to the almost perpendicular sides. The man was shot on the breast. He fell and rolled to the bottom of the pit. Major William Powell, USA.
You can't see me, you can't hear me out. You just hold me, baby, you could thaw me out, but I'm laying down in this cold, cold ground. It looks like I'm staying just about 6 feet.
Conflict goes badly for the Confederacy.